Welcome, everybody, to Decode REI. My name is Mina Ricky.
And I am Lydia Korjak.
Today, we're going to be interviewing Matthew Dunn.
Matthew holds a Bachelor Automotive Engineering degree from University of Swansea, UK.
He is the sole founder of Right Move Properties and an apartment syndicator whose company has owned 142 multifamily units within South and Central Florida, Eastern Tennessee, and Southern Alabama.
Over the past 6 years, his company, Right Move Properties, has acquired $17.8 million in assets.
This has been accomplished by utilizing value add strategies, capitalizing on his analytical skills and attention to detail. He's able to close investment opportunities by being competitive and operating with integrity while achieving strong returns for his investors. Hi, Matt. Welcome to the show.
Yes, hi, Matt. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Great. We love having you here, especially with your background and everything that you've done. We're so excited to have this conversation with you.
Yes, likewise. Can't wait.
Great. Before we get into actual podcast interview and conversation, I would love to hear one of your funny story being a multifamily owner and operator.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the one that springs to mind was when I was getting started. I had a 4-unit. I still own it up in Clearwater. And I was self-managing. I was doing everything on that asset when I first got started. And we were doing some heavy renovations on all 4 of the units. Well, I'd already got done with my first renovation on one of the back units. And it was 75% occupied when I purchased it. So there were 3 residents in there when I was doing the renovation. Well, anyway, unit 2, I remember this clearly. She was actually due to be moving out within about a couple of months. And so I went and knocked on her door and spoke with her about that. And she said, "What are you talking about? I've got another 6 months left on my lease." And I said, "Well, here's your lease. As you can see, you only have, 60 days. And she accused me of missing certain parts of my male anatomy. And she was a very, kind of religious church-going lady. And she'd actually been getting support from the local ministry for her rent. And so I was just like completely blown away that, she came out with that. So up front. So it was very, very funny. I came home, told my wife about it, and she just thought it was hilarious. And at the time I was quite offended, but that kind of sticks in my mind as one of the funniest stories I've had when I was self-managing back then. So
The best part about a funny story is that it's a story. It was resolved.
yeah,
Nobody died.
we figured it out. She left within the 60 days begrudgingly. She was very, very upset to leave, but it was what it was. She was a heavy smoker. The unit was destroyed. So, lots of stories from that asset, honestly.
Yeah, well, let's get a little bit more into the weeds. And we like to talk to operators because that's the non so sexy part of this business. Everybody wants to own multifamily. I own 10,000 units. I don't do anything. I wake up and I'm rich. Oh, yeah? Well, I don't know that many people that live like that. So you're talking about a heavy lift when it comes to that renovation.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be pretty challenging, especially if you're getting started. You start with that, as you mentioned. And what made you continue on the road of multifamily or real estate? I guess also, how did you know that it would be multifamily? Because now you're having 10, 20, 50, 100, 200 little stories like that become funny later, but are not so funny at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I knew like at the beginning when I was looking to create an additional stream of income that multifamily was the vehicle for me. I'd network with other people from my local REIA meetings that were doing single family. And I'm like, this just doesn't sound like a viable business for me where you've got these houses which are effectively 100% empty while you're doing all the work. And then someone moves out and it's empty again. I just felt like the multifamily business just made the most sense. And I'll give you an example of what happened on that, that 4-unit. I was renovating at one time 3 units at the same time, but I was able to cover my mortgage from that one unit that was occupied. So my out-of-pocket costs were minimized tremendously. So that was like, well, this is a no-brainer. Why wouldn't everybody do this?
Yeah. Yeah. We had a single family home rent unit in Dallas, and we broke even every year. Like we never made any money. So like, mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the key of multifamily. You have extra cash. So you own quite few properties. I want to talk about the strategies. How do you look for property? What strategies do you look?
So I've been up until this point exclusively targeted on market listings. So I use brokers, I use the MLS, I use agents. When I got started, I was using exclusively just the MLS for smaller plexes, so like the fourplexes and triplexes and things like that. Then I switched to commercial in 2019, and I've been exclusively using multifamily brokers up until this point. So that's been my lead source up until this time. However, I will say at the moment that's become quite challenging over the last 6 months because inventory's been quite limited. So I will be actually looking to perhaps make some changes.
That's great. What red flags do that you look for that you says, you know what, this property is not for me?
Yeah, so I have a pretty solid criteria that I work by already. So, if it gets through that, then the main red flag would need to be something that, it's been misrepresented from the seller. So, for example, I look for 80s and newer. I look for predominant 2-1s. I don't like anything in a flood zone, especially since the most recent storm came through. That just reinforced that criteria even more. But a red flag, I guess there's a couple things. So if I'm already in contract on a deal and I don't want to proceed with it, then a big red flag to not continue will be misrepresented financials and leases. That would be a huge, big concern, and that would be arguably almost a retradable offense, really. And if there's pushback from the seller on that, then we probably would be pulling out of the deal. But like I said, I think it's important to have a really clear criteria on the front end and have that you actually share with your brokers as well, so they know what you're looking for. And that way you can really minimize, the surprises off the bat.
Yeah, and multifamily is a business. It's an incredible business because you're providing housing for families. You're making sure they have a safe place to raise their families, and it's an important business. It's part of our society. Shelter has always been. How do you bring together the two sides of multifamily? On one side, you raise capital, you need capital to go and buy those businesses. And then on the other side, so you have to pay your investors on one side. You raise capital, you have to pay them. And then on the other side, you have your customers, your tenants, your residents, which you have to be careful on how much you can raise the charge for their rent. How do you marry those two? What's your sense on that?
Yeah, I really like that question because it is very important on both sides. I would say, you can't have one without the other. It's a very fine line. At the beginning, I ran out of capital, my own capital, pretty quickly. So yes, you're right. You need those investors, and for them to continue wanting to work with you, and you need to be providing them good returns. And what comes with that is making sure your resident base is solid. So you cannot have one without the other. Well, I guess ultimately I do focus making sure that my investors' interests are paramount. But the important thing is to make sure you have a strong property manager on your team that can keep a satisfied resident base. And that comes down to really picking the right deal in the beginning. Making sure that you use your property manager when you're touring these assets and doing the inspections to make sure your business plan is going to work. And that way, you can really minimize the risk for those investors.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. You talked about the team. I want to talk about your team. Who's on your team, Matt?
Let's see. So I've got, this is a pretty big, a big list actually. So you have multiple lenders. I depending on the type of the asset, I will be calling one of 5 different lenders potentially, whether it be agency or community or bridge. Not doing so much bridge anymore. Insurance agents, those are very important. You want to be in kind of talking to them fairly early on, make sure that your underwriting is accurate, especially here in Florida. Insurance is pretty challenging right now. Of course, you got your property management, and then you've got your brokers, your actual broker that you're working through. And I will tell you, it's very important to keep that broker up, up to speed on your progress through the deal as well. They hate being in the dark. So that's a very important tip that I will give, is because brokers the last thing you want is a broker to ask what's going on when you're in a contract. If you can be proactive and give them updates, they love that. You've got your asset manager. The way I position myself, I'm more on the front end. I purchase a deal, I get it in contract, and I'll bring in an asset manager. You've got your investors, you've got your legal team, and then you've got your mentors, like your coaches and things like that. So it's a pretty big team.
That's amazing. How do you keep up with them?
So it's very much deal specific, of course. With an active asset that we own, at the moment, then I'll be doing weekly or monthly calls with the investors. I'll be speaking with the asset manager on probably a bi-weekly basis. I do a little bit of capital raising, so it's important to just keep networking at events and meeting new people that perhaps are interested in coming into the deals that are perhaps in my markets of focus. So things like that, really. Brokers I probably follow up with the most regularly, because that's ultimately where my deals come from. So I try to have like a regular routine of calling my brokers every 3 or 4 weeks.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's very specific. I love it. So systems, he's got a system. Matt, I like to ask the philosophical questions. She likes to ask more the action questions. But let's just change the conversation a little bit. If you were able to see where the multifamily business is from the inside before you got into this business, would you still pursue it? Why yes and why not?
I would, yeah. The reason for that, I actually feel like I was quite well prepared for multifamily investing from my previous career, honestly. I used to work in customer relations and technical support for an ultra-luxury car company. That often required me to be thinking on my feet, constant problem solving, honestly. And I feel like real estate is, on a regular basis, it's problem solving. So, yes.
The more people you can solve problems to, the more money you will make.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
If they pay to solve the problem. That's important.
It is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I feel like being in real estate, it's all about problem solving. One other thing that I want to ask you is about when you look at the property, property is not performing. What kind of value adds do you see in a property? And, how are you thinking, I know that one of your buy criteria has to be the cash flowing, but how do you cash flow even more? What do you do to the property?
So I think that comes down to using a solid property manager, right, on the front end. So you need to be bringing them in on a deal really at the beginning. Like I said, they need to be coming with you on the tour, ideally. And what can happen, what they'll be able to tell you is this rent roll that we have here, is this real? Is this, and then is our pro forma rents here really achievable? And if they are, what kind of amenities and finishes do we need to do here to achieve our pro forma rent, for our investors? I think that's probably one of the most important things that you need to be doing on the front end. The worst thing you can do is go out, trust what you see on the offering memorandum, assume that's going to work, assume that you've got, you're going to be able to have this 15, 20% year-over-year rent growth, and then just put that in your underwriting and hope for the best. That's a recipe, but it's a disaster in my opinion. So on every acquisition, I'll always bring in the PM. They're the experts in that market. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm also, very tuned into the market, but, they do this every day. So I think that's probably one of the best ways to ensure that your value add approach is going to be successful.
That's right. Would you ever consider having your own management company?
Personally, I wouldn't. No, I cherish my my time with my family, and we love to travel. So the reason I do this is to have the freedom to be able to spend time with my kids and do what we want when we want to do it. So,
and that you do. That's for sure. Will you share a little bit about your was it a year of traveling?
2 years.
2 years. Okay, please just Share a little bit. What did you do? Where did you travel? What was your vehicle? And how old are the kids? And
Yeah,
how was
absolutely.
that?
No, definitely fond memories of that trip. So I was able to exit my W-2 in the summer of 2020, right in the midst of all the craziness. I was working with, like I said, a luxury car company and very good income. So I decided to pull the plug on working for them. There's many reasons for that, but I'd already got to a point where I felt like real estate was my future. So we decided to pick up a travel trailer. We bought a travel trailer and we already had a truck to be able to tow it with. And we hit the road in July of 2020. We were originally just going to do 1 year of travel. We were, we had our sights on the Pacific Northwest, and then from there, figure out where we wanted to go next. At that time, it was very much dependent on restrictions of the pandemic and things. So, but we only got as far as Colorado on the way kind of home, and we were like, wow, a year's gone already. And our kids, when we left, were 4 and 2. I was actually, believe it or not, I was able to buy deals on the road. It's a little bit challenging, honestly, to do that, but it is possible just to be very disciplined. Ultimately, we extended it another year. We rented our house here in Southwest Florida for 2 total years, and we did 35 states, 18 national parks. My wife homeschooled our oldest daughter for a year and a half, and yeah, we just got back last August after an amazing trip. Moved back into our original home, and yeah, got some excellent memories from that.
There is such a growth that happens when you're traveling. I mean, I remember the story when one time I saw you at the airport. We were going to a boot camp and you were struggling. You told me the story of your wife was calling you because one of your daughters had fall down and had hurt her fingers. And I mean, like that's already very extreme for most people to take. So there is a lot of growth that has to go with
Of course,
with traveling.
there is. Yeah, no, I'm hopeful our kids can remember a little bit of it. And I think we took something like 18,000 photographs over the 2 years. So, if nothing more, they'll be able to see those. But yeah, no, we honestly, I'd like to maybe do trips like that again, maybe for slightly shorter periods. But yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
Maybe 2 months or 3 months at a time instead of 2 years at a time.
Yes.
The beauty of that, Matt, and I think that's such a blessing that you're able to do it at a young age, because traveling in the RV, you realize that there is a lot of people that wait until they retire
Mm-hmm.
to be able to do it, to be able to pull the plug. And it's like, well, by then you're 60 something and you're carrying a big trailer, you're traveling. The drivers out there in the country, all over, are getting crazier and crazier the way they drive. So you're dealing with this huge vehicle, super dangerous. You can only go at certain speeds, and you're 65, 70. Your reaction time is just not as good as when you were younger. And anyways, it's just such a blessing that you did it when you were young, the kids were young, and yeah, great,
Yeah,
great
no,
memories.
and honestly, it worked out a great time because there were so many other younger people during that time that were so sick of staying at home and self-isolating. That was all the rage, and honestly, homeschooling has just exploded. Really in the last few years, with people being able to do that and travel on the road. So yeah, the world's changed, honestly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Definitely traveling. I love traveling. And if I could, I would travel as well. And multifamily, I believe that's what allows you to travel because, you can do this business everywhere.
You can.
One of the things that I want to ask you is what challenges do you face in multifamily space right now? And how do you overcome them?
I would say at the moment, I find myself a little bit frustrated on a number of occasions, just where deals have just, there's been lack of inventory, or perhaps, certainly in the last cycle, which we're sort of past that, where, there was inventory, but, people were just overspending on them. I found that quite a challenge, honestly. I just found myself just getting outbid and questioning, well, how is this buyer able to kind of make this deal work at this price? And then I'd see others all around me closing deals. So that was a personal challenge, I suppose, that I've had to work through on a number of occasions. And I guess I've I try to remind myself now that this is my journey and I should not be comparing myself to others. Trust the process, it'll happen. So at the moment, I probably have a current challenge with a desire to scale into some substantially larger assets. And I'm trying to figure out a way to get into that space more. I'm at 142 doors now, but that's made up of, sort of 24 units here, 40 there, things like that. So I'm trying to get into the 80 to 150 space, and I'm trying to lead into that uncomfortable feeling of what that's most likely going to look like. But in my experience, when I feel that way, I should definitely, go in that direction, because usually best things happen when you do that.
That good old topic of getting uncomfortable. And honestly, having the right team and the right people around you will allow you to do it, especially because you have a track record already. We already seen how you manage, how you go about it, how stable you are as a person and as a business human being. And so it shouldn't, I think it's just mental. I think you should just go for it. And I think you're there already.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I believe you will succeed. I remember you telling me you don't want to be the smartest man in a room, that you're always scaling to grow your knowledge. And I think the secret to, multifamily, especially real estate space, is continually learning and evolving. So if you're getting into 80 to, 100 doors and above, I so see you succeed because of your analytical mind. And I know that you like to micromanage things, and your analytical mind will definitely figure it out and you'll succeed in it.
Thank you. I know that
Hey,
means a lot.
hey, Matt,
Mhm.
I have a question. What's the shifts that you're seeing? Let's say you focus on Central Florida, right? And an area of Tennessee. You can tell us about that. What shifts do you see coming in this multifamily industry? What challenges are you seeing besides, well, I think one of the biggest challenges for everybody, not just for you, is inventory.
Mhm.
So there's probably going to be, it seems that we're getting more new construction on multifamily. What shifts are you seeing in the market of multifamily? What do you see?
So I think at the moment, I think all of us need to be brushing up our skills on creative financing strategies. I have a deal in contract right now in Ocala, and that's a seller financing deal. That actually was presented as a seller financing deal from the seller, so that was good. And we are seeing more deals like that come through brokers, where a year ago, it would be very rare for a broker to want to work, with a seller financing deal, because they usually want to know, how they're going to get their commissions. So I think making sure that all of us are being a little bit more educated on those creative financing strategies, whether that be a subject to seller financing, master lease option, things of that nature. I feel pretty confident we're going to see probably 2 more Fed hikes this year, and that's probably going to open up more sellers being willing to be open to terms, and then just being able to talk intelligently to those sellers and to those brokers about how that deal can work, for that seller to achieve their number, right, is going to be critical. So that's kind of how I'm planning on adapting, and already started.
Totally agree with you. Seller financing going to be the key right now because the interest rates keep on going up and up. So that's great.
Yeah, I can add to that a little bit too. So like I mentioned before, I've acquired all of my properties through the market as well. So I'm actually considering expanding that, the way in which I'm sourcing leads. I haven't fully
Hmm.
decided how that looks yet, but yeah, that's kind of something I'm strongly considering at the moment.
Yeah, that is very interesting. We have to shift and grow our business and how we do things and make it work. And the nice thing is we have so much technology these days. One of the big talks is AI.
Mhm.
What would you and have you played with that at all yet?
Not on the multifamily space. We do have a little bit of AI in our short-term rental guest communication software, but it's got nothing to do with deal sourcing. That's the only AI experience I have.
I heard that it's coming pretty soon where they'll be able to make cold calls and follow up like with the conversation with sellers. And we're looking at that on land acquisition, but I just wonder if you were already playing with that yourself.
I am not. No, I'm literally just scratching the surface when it comes to deal flow through off market. So I'm just getting started on that.
That's cool.
Yeah, definitely. You'll probably succeed on it. You'll check it out, especially aftermarket deals, because, like I said, you have a very interesting how you look at deals and how you find stuff based on your past experience in your job. So I think you'll succeed with it as well.
Thank you.
So now let's shift a little bit to the. I wanted you to talk a little bit about your areas of interest and why are you focused on that market and where else are you looking to grow to?
In terms of my my market,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I've always been one to want to be investing within 2 hours of where I live. So I live in Sarasota, Florida. So I'll go down to Lee County, Fort Myers. I'll go up to Cala. We do have some stuff up in Gainesville as well, which is just over that 2 hour mark. But yeah, that's kind of where I want to stay. Honestly, it just gives me, and I think it helps when you're raising money and you're talking to your investors that you know your market really well because you actually live there. I know a lot of operators perhaps don't do that or need to do that or can't do that because they live in perhaps areas where there isn't any deals. But I'm fortunate enough to live in a market where there's a lot of growth. People are moving here in droves. There's very strong economic climate. So that's good. I do have a secondary market in East Tennessee, but that's mainly because I have a couple short-term cabins in that market in the Smokies. And had it not been for that, I wouldn't be using East Tennessee as a secondary market. But because I go there anyway, it makes a lot of sense. So that's kind of been my focus, and it's been working. I feel like when you're getting started, you should probably not have any more than really 1-2 markets tops, because otherwise you're never going to be that specialized or knowledgeable on the market.
So if there is a youngster that wants to join this business, this multifamily industry, probably it would be really good if they are in a very isolated area to maybe move to a more dense area so they have more opportunity.
Either that or they align partner with somebody that is in a market where there is good deals. They could find a partner that's effectively a boots on the ground for them, and they I know many people that live where there's no deals. They just partner with people that live where the market is strong.
Mm-hmm. I've seen you I saw you this week at the conference, at one 2-day conference, and it really surprised me to see you there, Matt, because it seems that you are very conscious about networking. And I admire that because networking takes time and it takes effort, takes money. And so tell me a little bit about networking. Why do you do it? What's the reason behind it? And did you get any benefits from it?
Yeah, I really enjoy it. Oddly, if you'd have asked me that question 5 years ago, I'd have given you a very different response. I found the growth in this business comes from the people you meet. You need to be out there meeting other people, networking, getting to understand, you can talk to anyone and find out, what they're working on and how honestly, it's about giving back value. I mean, I was talking to a gentleman on Monday and he was just kind of brand new. He didn't know where to start. And I often feel like I'm still fairly new at this. So I gave him my opinion on where he should start and, the asset types, that he should be looking at. Because I know how it felt back then. When you're getting started, like literally at the beginning, you don't even know whether you want to do storage units or mobile home parks or multifamily or single family. There's so many different options and it's very overwhelming. So, I found the best, growth for me is sticking to one niche and moving forward with that. That is really the best advice I try to give everybody. Otherwise you spin your wheels. So I know that didn't technically answer your question, but I enjoy doing that. I enjoy giving back to, people I meet at events, and, quite often you'll meet someone that perhaps has got, something that you may be looking for. And I don't go there looking for that, but that tends to happen quite often. So yeah, it's really fun. I enjoy it.
And it's a very long-term investment too, because I do remember we talked to each other when I was just like brand new into the multifamily space. And I remember how kind you were to be like talking to me and spending time telling me what is what and what numbers are we looking at and how does it work. And I thought, wow, that's a really cool guy. He had nothing to offer. Okay, cool. But now we are, you know, a few years later, now we're on a conversation on the podcast, hopefully trying to get you out there so people can know you, trying to uplift you a little bit and say, yay, Matt, you are doing great. And it's just funny, but it is a very long-term view on actions.
It is. And I will say this is a very small community. The multifamily business is definitely, if you operate with integrity and you treat everybody with respect, this is about the long game. I see people that sometimes are new and they try to retrade these deals, and you're going to make a bad name for yourself in the broker world, and that name's going to get out there. So it's never about that one deal. It's about all the deals you're going to be doing in your business career. So, it's people talk. So it's very important.
100%. Yes. Amen to that.
Totally. So when you look for investors, money raising, I want to talk about money right now.
My favorite.
What your favorite, right? Money, everybody's favorite. What kind of criteria? I'm sure you have criteria for the investor that you wanted to bring into your deal. Can you tell me your criteria for this investor?
So it's going to kind of depend on the deal a little bit. So the last 3 deals I've done have all been joint ventures. And that what comes with that is an investor that wants to be a lot more active. A joint venture is just that. You're joint venturing in the asset, and that should require each member of that partnership be active in some capacity. So that type of investor is very different than somebody that perhaps just wants to park, some capital in a syndication and is happy to just receive that quarterly distribution and that quarterly PDF with how their asset's doing. So it's going to really depend on the deal I have at the time, right? So like I said, the last few deals have all been joint ventures. So those partners I've been looking for and connecting with have all been ones that have got an appetite to want to be more active. They want to grow in that space. They want to understand the ins and outs of the business so they can go off and do it themselves, which is really cool. So that's kind of how it's been for me the last year or so. I will tell you, for the next couple of deals this year, I am looking to focus more on those bigger assets. And what comes with that is going to be a syndication. You can really only JV up to a certain point unless you have some tremendous capital in your back pocket with people with many hundreds of thousands of dollars ready to go. That isn't the norm. So that in that sense, I'll be looking to raise or connect with people more that are interested in those passive investments, and that's kind of the focus for the rest of this year.
Well, you can always send them this recording, Matt, and they can learn a little bit more about you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, he has actually a couple of recordings. So, Matt, how can people find you if somebody wants to, not JV but LP into bigger deals with you? Where can they find you?
Yes, so they can email me at matthew@rightmoveproperties.net. I'm on Facebook as Matt Dunn. I'm on LinkedIn as Matthew Dunn. And I can give my phone number too, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's 941-504-0548.
Great.
Very good. Very generous of you to give us your phone number. Matt, thank you so much for coming with us, sharing. I feel like I want to hear more from you. Like there is so much more in there. I know there are a lot more stories in there.
Indeed. Well,
but I mean,
maybe a follow-up in a little while.
Yeah, definitely. I want to follow up with you, especially you getting into syndication, bigger deals. I'm sure there's a lot of listeners who wants to know your progress and probably partner up with you in LP form. So we will do a follow-up.
Look forward
100%.
to it.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.